Welcome to the deep dive. Our goal here really is to dig into piles of research, the complex details from history, finance, human behavior, and boil it all down into something clear, something you can actually use.
And today we're tackling this paradox that seems central to power, especially in the financial world.
Yeah. Why is it that fundamental change, real deep change, always seems to kick off with some kind of disaster, some
It's
crisis?
that point of maximum stress, isn't it? When things are ticking along nicely, people,
Yeah.
well, they just coast. They kind of sleep, as some our sources describe it.
Complacent.
Exactly. It's only when the ground starts shaking, when trust just evaporates,
Yeah.
that you see these twin forces emerge. Fear on one side and ambition on the other.
So we're looking at how crisis isn't just something to survive.
No, it's actually used, sometimes deliberately weaponized even, to rewrite the basic rules of how things work.
We're calling this the architecture of trust. We're looking into how these trusted hands emerge these figures who step up.
And it's not just about calming the panic, is it? It's about using that moment, that chaos, to put in place a whole new blueprint for how stability works.
Using chaos to build structure. It sounds completely backwards.
It does. But our mission today is to really unpack the logic there. How does chaos lead directly to, well, to lasting order?
Okay, and here's the really specific, almost strange hook. How does a summer holiday in Europe back in July 1914, plus a few desperate telegrams, and this story about a single locked library door, how does all that somehow lead to a new global money system?
It sounds incredible, but that's what we're diving into, the actual physics of that kind of power shift.
All right, let's start with who these heroes are, these trusted hands. Because they're often not who you'd expect, are they?
Not at all. They're rarely these
Yeah.
perfect figures. They're defined more by the pressure they can handle. Benjamin Strong is a key example here, absolutely vital in setting up the Federal Reserve.
And Strong's background. It wasn't typical for a Wall Street leader back then.
Far from it. No college degree, for starters. And his personal life was marked by just profound tragedy. He lost his wife to postpartum depression, lost a daughter young. Real deep personal wounds.
Wow.
Yet he becomes the go-to trusted hand in the financial world.
So it suggests he wasn't picked for being flawless, but maybe because he'd already shown he could endure immense personal difficulty.
I think that's exactly right. His resilience was proven. And his big moment, his entry onto that national stage, happens right in the thick of the 1907 panic.
And crucially, this was a time before the Fed existed. The U.S. had no central bank.
That's the key context. In 1907, the system didn't look to an institution when things broke. It looked to a person, J.P. Morgan.
The ultimate individual power broker.
Absolutely. When the system failed, authority just defaulted to him. People looked to Morgan for decisive leadership, and he delivered by forcing people to commit.
Which brings us to that locked library door story. It sounds like something out of a novel. How does a piece of furniture explain financial structure?
Huh. Well, it shows what it takes sometimes to force commitment in a panic. It was a Sunday night, the system was teetering, and Morgan literally gathered the heads of the New York banks in his library.
And just kept them there.
Pretty much. Barred the door, effectively wouldn't let them leave until they signed legally binding agreements to pool their money and prop up the failing system.
So the instinct is to run, to hoard cash.
Exactly. The crowd wants to flee. Morgan forced them to stand still, cut through all the noise and fear, and demanded action. That willingness to just take control unilaterally, it shuts down the panic vacuum instantly.
So he became the central bank just for that night by locking a door. Incredible.
Essentially, yes. But fast forward just a few years, and Strong himself is facing an even bigger crisis, 1914, the global liquidity freeze when Europe goes to war.
Right, the Great War mobilization.
And that crisis showed the limits of relying on just one person, like Morgan. When Britain mobilized, London shut its stock exchange.
Which was the hub for global payments, especially with the gold standard.
Precisely. The whole international system just froze. The dollar, usually stable, suddenly became unreliable overseas. Americans traveling or living abroad were stranded.
No way to get cash.
Their paper money wasn't trusted, they couldn't access funds, complete liquidity crisis.
And Strong steps in again. But this time, realizing the core issue is confidence. He proposes something truly wild. using warships to ship gold.
Yeah, U.S. warships carrying physical gold across the Atlantic. Think about that image.
A battleship as an armored car for trust.
Exactly. It wasn't just about the metal. It was about using the ultimate symbol of national power to back the idea of credit, to physically transfer gold, to restore faith where it had vanished. That's what a trusted hand does, the unexpected, bold move that convinces everyone the center can and will hold.
It's amazing. But what's even more mind-bending is that while all this public drama is playing out, the permanent fix, the Federal Reserve itself, is being designed in secret.
Yes. The irony is just perfect. This cornerstone of public monetary policy was blueprinted by a small group meeting secretly on Jekyll Island, off the coast of Georgia.
Jekyll Island? It sounds like a Bond villain's lair or something.
Well, maybe less glamorous. Apparently, they used coded nicknames, kept the curtains drawn, told everyone they were just going duck hunting.
Elk hunting. So the guys writing the rules for global finance used nicknames and pretended to be duck hunting.
That's the story. It highlights how ordinary, or at least how private and messy, these massive turning points can be.
It wasn't some grand public debate. It was hatched in private meetings, on train cars, over dinners.
It really underscores that the architecture of power often emerges from these very contained, sometimes secretive, almost ceremonial moments. They're just people, but people acting decisively when everything else is chaos.
Okay, so we've seen the actors, the moments. Let's step back now and look at the underlying principles. What were the sort of laws of physics that Morgan and Strong were tapping into, maybe without even naming them?
All right, let's try and distill this. We can pull out maybe 3 fundamental rules or laws that seem to govern how power gets created or reshaped during a crisis.
Okay, lay them out for us. What's the first one?
Law 1 is the power vacuum. Basically, when the existing systems, the established institutions, can't keep up with events and in a real crisis, they almost never can. A gap opens up. A vacuum of authority.
And something has to fill that gap.
Exactly. It always gets filled. Either it's filled by the chaotic energy of the crowd, sheer panic, or it's filled by individuals who actually dare to step into that space and take responsibility.
So the person who steps up gets to define what happens next.
They write the new rules. It's not about being appointed. It's about choosing to act when others freeze.
Okay, so authority isn't given, it's seized by closing the vacuum, which leads to how that authority actually works, right?
Precisely. That brings us to Law 2, contractual trust. Think about money itself. It's fundamentally built on conditional trust.
We trust that this piece of paper or these digits have value.
Right. But when the conditions underpinning that trust get shaky, rumors, war starting, capital flaying the system, needs something new to anchor trust. It needs new collateral.
Okay, but wait, you said in 1907, Morgan, the person, was the collateral, his reputation. But by 1914, Strong is building the Fed, a mechanism. Is that a shift?
That's a crucial shift, and it highlights the core tension. You move from relying on an individual's promise, Morgan's word, which, powerful as it was, died with him, to relying on institutional discipline.
A system with rules.
Rules, data, transparency, accountability built into the process. The whole point of the Fed was to replace that generalized emotional fear with something more predictable, more disciplined.
So trust gets anchored in the process, not just the personality. That makes it last longer.
That's the idea. It aims for durability beyond any single individual.
Okay. And that leads to the third law, which sounds a bit more personal. It looks inside the leader.
Yeah, Law 3. The tragedy of the hero. We mentioned Fitzgerald earlier. Give me a hero, I will write a tragedy. It's this observation that the people who step up, these strong hands, often carry significant personal wounds.
Like Strong's own life.
Exactly. And the paradox is that this private pain seems to create a kind of internal, let's call it compression. It gives them the capacity needed to handle massive public crises.
Compression, how does that work?
Well, think of it like this. If you've navigated extreme personal disaster, your own worst-case scenario, you develop a different kind of emotional bandwidth.
You've seen worse, maybe.
In a way, when the public is panicking, when the market's screaming, someone with that history might have a calmer internal core. The external noise just doesn't overwhelm them in the same way because they've managed intense internal storms already.
So they can see the structure through the noise.
They can often see the path to the fix more clearly. But there's a critical warning here.
Okay.
If that power, born from enduring hardship, isn't immediately balanced with strong structures, with wisdom, with accountability, that hero, that trusted hand, can morph into something else.
Like what?
Like a single, unchallenged point of authority. a monopoly on power. And that can become really dangerous down the line.
Right. Okay, so that's the big picture. That's how these huge systems like global finance rebuild themselves from chaos. But, the real value in these deep dives is always bringing it down to earth. How do these massive ideas apply to us, to our own lives, our work, our teams?
Absolutely. It's one thing to understand how global markets change because of JP Morgan. It's another to ask, what does a billion-dollar bailout teach you about running your Tuesday team meeting?
Exactly. So let's translate these laws into some practical, actionable lessons. How do we build our own personal architecture of trust?
Okay, let's try 4 key lessons drawn from these principles.
Great. Let's start with lesson one, applying that power vacuum idea.
Lesson 1, responsibility before title. This is crucial. Leadership isn't something you wait to be given with a fancy title. It's what you do. It's the behavior of actively stepping in to reduce uncertainty when everyone else is sort of looking around, hesitating.
So don't wait for the promotion. If you see a gap, a problem you can help fix.
Step into it. That's leadership in action. That's how you start building trust.
Okay. And lesson two builds on that shift we talked about, from the individual hero like Morgan to the system like the Fed.
Lesson 2, design mechanisms for trust. In any group, your team at work, your family, your business, you can't rely solely on one person always being there, always being the hero, the night watchman.
Right. People get sick, they leave.
Exactly. So you need to build a reliable night watch process. You need systems.
So anchor trust in the structure itself.
Yes. Think about simple things. Clear rules for sharing information, transparent processes for how money flows, maybe even running practice drills for how your team would handle a small crisis.
Make the system robust so trust doesn't depend on one person always being on.
Precisely. The system needs to function, and trust needs to hold, even when the key person takes a day off.
Okay, lesson three touches on that tragedy of the hero idea, converting pain energy. This sounds intense.
It is, but it's powerful. The idea is that your own setbacks, your personal struggles, they don't have to be weaknesses. If you process them, learn from them, they can be converted into discipline, into empathy, into resilience.
So it's not about being tough and emotionless like some kind of robot.
No, not at all. True strength isn't being rigid, like wearing armor to block everything out. It's more like developing that deep internal calmness that lets you think clearly and act rationally when everyone around you is losing it.
Yeah, quiet competence.
That's the real currency of a trusted hand in any situation. And finally, host speaker, let's bring it back to JP Morgan and that very physical act in his library.
Lesson four, the art of locking the door at the right time.
Yes. When chaos is swirling, when everyone's distracted or pulling in different directions, effective leadership sometimes requires creating a focused space, a metaphorical or sometimes literal locked door moment.
That got through the noise.
Exactly, to force a decision, to get binding commitments. Major breakthroughs often require eliminating distractions and getting everyone on the same page right then and there.
So in a small business, that might just mean a focused, no-phones meeting to agree on the top priority.
It could be exactly that. Taking the team off-site for just 2 hours to force consensus on the one thing that matters most for the next month. You need that dedicated, disruption-free space to get things truly decided, signed, sealed, delivered.
So putting it all together, this trusted hand isn't some magical quality you're born with.
Not at all. It's really an internal habit, isn't it? It's about training yourself, practicing how to withstand pressure, how to keep your promises even when it's hard, and how to maintain that foresight to see potential structure when all anyone else sees is chaos.
The lesson seems pretty clear then.
Yeah. The person who manages to stay calm, steps into the vacuum, and provides that structure during a crisis, they're the ones who get to write the new rules. For better or worse.
Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you, the listener, with a challenge. Start thinking about designing your own small, personal, central bank.
What does that mean? Well, think about maybe one single non-negotiable financial rule you could commit to for yourself. Or perhaps a really clear communication principle you establish with your partner or your team. Or even just a firm family agreement about something important.
Small acts of structure.
Exactly. These little acts of building commitment and structure are how you develop that steady internal hand, that resilience. When you become a trusted hand in your own world, however small.
Society gets another small pillar of stability.
Right, and that ultimately is how we start to transform the immense weight of tragedy, of crisis, into something productive, into maturity.